I was listening to the attorney earlier, and I told him I was going to tell an attorney joke. But I'm not going to do it because I may need him someday. What's the difference between a bottom-dwelling scum sucker and an attorney? Nothing. So, sorry, is he here? Good, he's not here. All right. My name is Chris Wagoner, and I've been a police officer and trainer police officers since 1980. Long time. Since my 18th birthday. I became a police officer in South Florida in Broward County when I turned 18, right out of high school. No life experience, had no idea what I was doing, always wanted to be a cop, I just thought it was cool. And I worked my way up through that, became a detective, did a whole bunch of stuff, and then I ended up in training. And I started training police officers in Broward County back in 1983. And I have been training police officers ever since. I ran the police academy here in Alachua County at Gainesville at Santa Fe for the last 23 years. And I just recently retired. I retired in February. So for the last 43 years of my life, I have been doing law enforcement or law enforcement training. And I'm here to tell you, this is a shocking statistic for you. Police officers get zero, that's with a Z, zero firearms training in the law enforcement academy in the state of Florida. They are not taught any firearms laws in the police academy. Up until June of last year. Prior to that, all of those years before that, police officers never received any firearms law training. It was not in their curriculum. And being in the training world, I noticed something in about 2016. We started having incidents throughout the state of Florida, police officers violating citizens' rights when it comes to firearms. Taking them from them on traffic stops, holding them at gunpoint because they're fishing on a bridge in Miami, doing all kinds of crazy things. So I went back to say, what are we doing that we're doing wrong, or what are we not doing? And I went through the entire training curriculum and discovered that we don't teach any of it. So in 2016, I submitted to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, who runs law enforcement training in the state of Florida, so now you kind of get an idea why it might be a problem. It took 4 years to get 3 pages of firearms laws added to the training curriculum of law enforcement in the state of Florida. And it was just instituted, I started it in 2016, it was just instituted in June of 2019. And it's now being taught throughout the state of Florida. Problem was, you'll thank me in about 15 years when those are the guys that are out there doing all this stuff, and all the old guys like me who never got that training originally are not the ones stopping you and doing it. But yes, I appreciate the accolade. What you don't understand is I submitted 10 pages to them of curriculum. They published 3. The 3 pages they published are better than nothing, but sometimes training the better than nothing is not sufficient. So in order to try and help things, being in training as long as I was around the state, and I have taught at most academies, we have 43 training academies in the state of Florida. There's 43 different places law enforcement officers are trained. Some states have 1, some have regional. We have 43 of them, and they're located at the colleges throughout the state of Florida. I sent off to every single one of them my PowerPoint, my teaching notes, and all the materials that I use when I teach the class here locally. And it was taught for the very first time in January of this year here in Alachua County. Thankfully, it was well received. The students were awesome, and the information that they got was hopefully what I'm hoping they're going to take out and share with other police officers. Cops are not the enemy. The lack of training for police officers is the enemy, and the way that cops pass information on to other cops is the enemy. Many of you in Florida are familiar with the fabled 3-step law. I cannot tell you how many hours I have spent trying to break that myth, especially with police officers. That came from a 1976 training memo from Florida Highway Patrol. A training memo became this myth that just perpetuated itself for the rest of eternity, and is still going today. And there's still people out there, officers, who use that, and it doesn't even exist. So the 3-step rule? The 3-step rule in Florida, cops used to believe that you had to have 3 separate physical moves to get to a gun before it was lawful to have it in a car. which if you follow the laws in the state of Florida, you know that's not true by any means. But they still do that, and people were being arrested for lawfully carrying firearms, and it still happens. I want to give kudos to Florida Carry for their recent publication of a letter that they sent out to all the police and sheriffs in the state of Florida, basically saying enough is enough. You don't train your police officers, nothing happens, we're going to take legal action. I think that's wonderful, and I followed their letter up with one by myself to every police officer, every police chief, and every sheriff in the state, stating I'm offering you free in-service training to your police department. Yeah. Because you have to understand that if they don't get it, the training, it doesn't do any good. You know, we can tell them they got to have the training, we can sue them, but unless they have the training, it doesn't do them any good. The reason I looked over and looked at our FWC officer over here is because he's one of my former students, and he knows how I feel about firearms. And I can guarantee you he knows firearms laws. I guarantee you. He was taught right. But the thing is there's not enough of them out there taught right, and we're still having these issues with our civil rights being violated as law-abiding citizens. So when I teach at the police academies, what I'm hoping to do with some of these in-service training is the first thing that I mention to the cops is this. If you were that Hillsborough County deputy that was getting his head beat against the asphalt on the highway and watched all those hundreds of people drive by, and then finally somebody stopped, and who was it? It was an armed citizen, a lawfully armed citizen who shot and killed his attacker and saved that officer's life. Or maybe it could be the California Highway Patrol trooper who was doing basically the same thing, was getting shot and had gotten shot, and a citizen stopped and killed the attacker. Wouldn't you want these people on your side? There are over 2 million, actually it's 2,074,068 at last count, not that I'm counting, concealed carry licenses as of January 31st, 2020. That's 2 million backups. His nearest backup sometimes, because he works for FWC, is 30, 40, 50 minutes away. But I can tell you right now that hunters, because I'm a hunter myself, hunters and those of us that are into firearms would gladly step up and help him if he was in a bind. Those people are the people that they want on their side. We don't want to alienate them. So speaking from a law enforcement side, yes, now I'm retired. By the way, retirement is tiring. Now that I'm retired, I get the chance that I have more time to go out and do training. And I can tell you that police officers aren't your enemy. Florida Carry is doing a wonderful job of trying to educate the law enforcement community in Florida. What we have to do then is provide, like actually John brought it up, provide the means for the training to be done. And by offering to do that, I've got some other trainers who are like-minded like myself, especially in our area of Marion County, Alachua County. A lot of the officers are like-minded. This last class that I taught, there were 38 police recruits, young people who want to be cops. And I asked them, how many of you have your concealed carry license? And this is the very first week of class. And out of 38, 27 of them had their licenses. That's not a bad, it didn't used to be that way, that's not a bad ratio. And so when I asked them, I said, how many of you believe in the Second Amendment? The entire class, except for one person, raised their hand. And I didn't single them out, but I did point out, well, is there a reason that you don't believe in the Second Amendment? And here was their answer. I don't know enough about it to understand it. Well, at least they were being honest. At least they were being honest. So we then had to go into the entire explanation of the constitutional law issues. Law enforcement, you can really help out on your end as citizens. And some of the people in this audience actually know me personally, so they know that I'm speaking from the heart. You can help out. When you are asked by a police officer on a traffic stop, say you were driving a little bit too fast going somewhere and you got pulled over. The lawyers will tell you something. I'm going to tell you from a police officer's perspective. I have probably stopped, I don't know, in 35 years, a couple of tens of thousands of motorists. And here's what happens. This is the conversation if you do it. They hand me their driver's license and registration, and along with that comes a concealed carry permit. There are officers out there that will say, oh, that doesn't matter, I don't care, whatever. 90% of them will go, oh, are you carrying a firearm? Yes, I am. Where's it at? It's on my hip. You keep yours there, I'll keep mine where I got mine, and we'll have a good time. Generally, I would not write them a ticket, because here's what happens. I want to know what kind of gun you got. So I'd walk back up and I go, okay, well, what kind of firearm are you carrying? He says, well, it's this. I said, oh man, and then the whole 20 minutes goes into 30 minutes, and then you're like, well, you're free to leave, you're just talking. That's usually the way that the conversation goes if you escalate it or de-escalate it that way. You do not have to tell a police officer in the state of Florida that you're armed unless they ask. They have to specifically ask you. I'm asking you for the benefit of the officers, just give them your concealed carry card and say, hey, I'm carrying. And I guarantee you that 99 times out of 100, that will de-escalate the situation and you'll be better off, and the conversation will be much easier between everybody. Because like was pointed out before, the cops want to go home too. They got kids. We had a trooper that was just recently shot and killed. They understand that, and they have been taught for years and years and years, any gun is bad. We're trying to break that training cycle and make them understand that not every gun is bad. There are guns out there that can save their lives. And I'm very involved at the political level of keeping track of legislation and things like that that's going on in the state of Florida. And I'm sorry to say that the Sheriff's Association and the Chiefs of Police Association are not your friend. But here's who those are. Now remember this. Those are not the street cops. Those are not the guy or gal out there on the road that's patrolling or has to answer a call. Those are the heads of the departments and the sheriffs. They're elected officials or they're appointed officials. They do not represent the street level police officer. They don't. I'm telling you from personal experience. I have dealt with tens of thousands of cops in Florida. Been all over the state teaching. I worked with FDLE writing new training for cops, and I have spoken to thousands of them about the Second Amendment issues. And I will tell you from a unofficial, unknown polling, at least 90% of them are on our side. When I say our side, okay, about 90%. You'll still have a few that aren't out there, and they're usually the older ones, which is surprising. And I think it's because they're so ingrained in the training that they've had. All right, so we're trying to break that cycle, and we are really trying to break it. With the help of Florida Carry, with their recent notices, and hopefully getting this information out to the police departments, we can start a cycle of change. And it has to start with the young guys and the young girls who are going through the academy. And that just started in June. So if you're stopped by a younger police officer, I'm dating myself. If you're stopped by a younger police officer, you're more likely to have a good engagement as far as them knowing the law. All right, but things like Miami Beach and these issues with police officers taking guns from law-abiding citizens, we need to stop that. You don't do that on the side of the road. You don't do that if you're stopped by one of these non-Second Amendment types and they're going to take your gun from you or they're going to treat you in a way. Don't argue the point there. That's not the place to do it, and you're not going to win. I hate to say that. You don't want to get hurt. You don't want them to get hurt. The place to do it later is in internal affairs or with a lawsuit. All right? Just don't do it on the side of the street, because the side of the street's not the place to get involved. There are avenues to take. There are avenues to take, and that's why they're there. And I will gladly help anybody that has an issue. If you need to contact and figure out how to do that, I'm more than happy to help you. I also ask you this, though. If you run across one of these officers or these deputies out there, or my FWC buddies, and they are really nice and they help you out and they do whatever, it's nice to let them know that too. You'd be surprised how many times I've been spit on and had feces thrown on me and been thrown up on and all those kinds of things, and the accolades that you get are few and far in between compared to those things. So just give them an attaboy or say, hey, thanks or whatever when you get a chance if they do something nice for you. The other thing is, if they do something bad, you need to be a member of like Florida Carry or one of these other organizations. I recommend Florida Carry because I personally know their attorney, Eric, and he's awesome when it comes to this stuff. He's a really good guy. He knows his stuff, and Eric and I have worked on a couple of things together as far as getting people's rights and getting their weapons back. Don't be afraid to voice your opinion, but don't be foolish enough to lose your freedom over something we can resolve later. That's right. All right, so we'll take care of it. We will deal with it, but let us deal with it on the right level so you're not suffering because of it. And we will. We'll help deal with it. So do yourselves a favor, get educated, but have heart. The law enforcement infringements on your rights are hopefully coming to an end. It's a time issue. That's the problem. It's going to take time. In the state of Florida, we have about 212,000 police officers. To get every single one of them trained up takes time. And when you only have 4 or 5 people throughout the state that are teaching them what I would like to term the right way, it's going to take time to do it. We're going to do it. We'll get it done. But just give us some time, and you can help out by helping point out to us any kinds of infringements you might have that we can deal with. Okay? Thanks, folks. Appreciate it.